and your life.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم نور قلوبنا بالعلم وزين أخلاقنا بالحلم وافتح بيننا وبين قومنا بالحق وأنت خير الفاتحين ثم أما بعد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to my class. As you have noticed, today we started at 6:30 instead of 8 p.m. Central Time, and inshallah we'll continue at least from now until the end of the month of Ramadan, broadcasting at 6:30. If you remember, last week we said that we will start talking about interest-bearing transactions in the U.S. Honestly, I changed my mind and I found it maybe more beneficial for the time being to discuss the rules of zakah because the month of Ramadan is approaching and coming soon. The matter of fact, we are counting down just 2 or 3 days, and then we'll start fasting. All of us, or at least the vast majority of us, prefer to pay zakatul mal in the month of Ramadan, which is a good sign because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies the reward, of sadaqah in the month of Ramadan. So it's good actually to target the month of Ramadan as your zakah due date or zakah due month, if you wish, to start calculating and paying zakatul mal. This presentation that you see in front of you is a PowerPoint. It has more than 60, 70 slides, so I'm not gonna like stop by every single slide and explain it in full. I will just go to the most important concepts that American Muslims need to know about zakah. So I will skip maybe the some of the slides as we as we go. I will do this in purpose. Let me start with the technical definition of zakat to make it distinct actually from the general sadaqah and donation and tabarru'at that we do. When we say zakah from now on, we refer to the following. It is a prescribed charity. It's not an optional one. We're talking about one of the pillars of Islam, a prescribed charity, and specific assets, which means that not every single asset that you have or under your possession is zakatable one. Only certain assets are subject to zakatul mal, should be paid for specific recipients. So it's not our choice when it comes to distributing zakah. It has actually to be given to certain individuals under certain categories. One more time, from now on, when we say zakah, we refer to a prescribed charity, a mandatory one, not an optional one, and specific assets, okay, should be paid for specific recipients, just to make it, very, very distinct from the regular or optional sadaqah and donation that we do throughout the whole year long in and outside Ramadan. Of course, zakah is the third pillar of Islam, and it's always, or in most of the ayat in the Quran where there is a mentioning of salah, you will find zakah connected to it. Some of the virtues of sadaqah, freedom, from fear on the day of judgment. لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون, those who pay in charity. And there is a warning for those who hold off and refrain from paying zakat al-mal. You see here, سيطوقون ما بخلوا به يوم القيامة. If someone actually is a zakat payer, yet he or she decides not to pay zakat al-mal, then everything is held actually will be on his neck and shoulders in the day of judgment. سيطوقون ما بخلوا به يوم القيامة. What they stingily withhold shall be hung around their necks on the day of resurrection. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed zakah? I mean, we know that just briefly, to have a sense of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to clean the human heart of all manners of greed and miserliness. When you enforce yourself to pay for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you resist your inner desire of holding off the money and just keeping it to yourself, you prove to yourself and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you prefer his commands over your desire. You do not want, like by your human nature, you do not prefer to give your money to others for no return. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking you to give your money to others with no return on investment. You pay something and do not get anything in return. So if you decide to do it, you prove to your Lord that you are so obedient and so committed to his command, so much so that despite the fact that you do not want to pay and he wants you to pay, you listen to him, you do not listen to yourself. To improve ties of mutual love, to filter out impurity from our wealth, because sometimes actually, our wealth, our assets, our income might be contaminated with haram unknowingly. So when you pay in charity, you purify, you filterize, if you wish. Okay, you just keep what is halal, and whatever might be haram is already paid and given to substituting zakah by taxes. This is a very common question. I pay tax to the government, to the IRS. Would that be sufficient enough, or I do have to pay zakah on top of that? Differences between zakah and taxes. There are a lot of similarities between the tax that we pay to the government, to the IRS, versus the zakah that we pay as Muslims, whether we live in the US or we live somewhere else. Now, what are the differences and what are the similarities, if you wish, between the tax money that we pay versus the zakah that we pay? Zakatable wealth, in other words, what is to be included? Is the car that you drive, is the house that you live in, is the jewelry of your wife or daughters included or excluded? How about the saving that you have in the bank? How about the cash money that you have in your pocket? About the salary or the paycheck that you receive monthly? What is to be included in your zakah calculation and what is to be excluded? So zakatable worth, of course, versus non-zakatable worth. What is to be excluded? Okay, for example, the house that you live in, as long as it is for your personal use, okay, you live in it, it's not for rent, it's not for sale, then it should be zakah exempt. Just an example. So zakatable wealth versus non-zakatable wealth. Zakatability for the payer. What are the conditions or the criteria that has to be matched for someone to be considered as a zakah payer? Versus zakatability for the wealth. Again, certain criteria have to be matched in the property, in the asset, in the wealth that you have. Okay. For example, bulugh nisab, reaching the threshold, which is the minimum amount of wealth or a minimum volume of property, okay, or harvest or agricultural products, that if you have it, you need to consider paying zakat al-mal on it. If you do not have it, then you are not considered as a zakah payer. Something else, threshold versus poverty line. A lot of people get confused between the fact that someone is under poverty line. They think that by default that he or she is an eligible zakah recipient because, oh, he's under the poverty line. While if that individual is above the poverty line, then he has to be a zakah payer. Okay, you will be surprised that there is no connection between the two whatsoever. Threshold is a religious zakah related standard, okay, versus poverty line is just a economical, governmental, standard to determine who is eligible for financial support from the government, food stamp, for example, whatever the support might be, versus whosoever is not eligible to get any financial support from the government. But there is no connection between the two, as we will be explaining, inshallah. Combining assets to reach nisab. If you do have some cash money that does not reach the nisab, and you have cattle, for example, cows or buffalo or sheep or goat, okay, does not reach the nisab. Okay? Do you have to combine them both or not? That's inshallah something that we will be discussing. Consistency of possessing the threshold. If you started your hawl or your fiscal lunar year, let's say in the month of Rajab, in the month of Sha'ban, the month of Ramadan, whenever you accumulated an nisab threshold, and before the passage of one complete year, okay, the nisab actually went down at a certain point, you did not have a nisab. Okay, let's say that you have cash money. The nisab nowadays is $4,500, for example, which is very accurate. I would say, very accurate. $4,500 is the nisab nowadays. Okay, at a certain point throughout the whole year long, you went down to 3,000. You went down to $0. Okay, would that interrupt the hawl or the fiscal lunar year? or you're still good to go if you still have those 4,500 dollars after one complete year. So does the fact that you went below the nisab interrupt the hawl, so you have to start all over whenever you reaccumulate $4,500, or it doesn't make any difference? That's inshallah will be discussed. Salaries and professional fees, how to calculate zakah on the cash flow that you experience. If you work for a company and you receive like a monthly or bi-weekly check, should you count it? Should you document how much money you received and just wait for one complete year, or how to how to handle the regular payments that you receive? Even if you charge a professional fees, like you work as a physician, you have your own practice, as an engineer, as an attorney, as a lawyer, architect, whatever the profession might be, and you charge your clients money, right? And you receive money on a regular basis, sometimes on daily basis. Okay, how to handle that cash flow? Should you document everything and just keep record of everything, so you wait for every single payment? Okay, after 1 year you pay zakah on it, or how to handle it? Jewelry and ornaments, that will be discussed as well. Is jewelry included or excluded? Retirement funds, it's a very common question. If you have 403B, you work for non-for-profit organization, or you have 401k, or you have a pension plan, whatever the employer-based retirement account might be, whatever the individual-based retirement account might be. Maybe you have an IRA, individual retirement account, or just a brokerage account, or simple investment account, or 529 for the education of your kids in the future. How to calculate zakah, or basically is it included or excluded from your zakah calculation? Stocks, shares, and bonds. If you do have some investment in the stock market, we need to ask more questions before we give an answer. What kind of financial instruments you have there? Is it stocks? Is it shares? Is it bonds? Okay, and on. If you are a lender, you gave your money to others, or you borrowed money from others, okay, who's supposed to pay zakah on that money? Is it both the creditor and the borrower? Is it none of the above? Is it one of them? If the answer is one of them, then who's supposed to pay zakah? Is it the lender or the borrower? Mortgage and car loan. If you have monthly payments, you commit to $2,000 mortgage payment, or $500 to you, for your car payment, for the furniture, for the appliances, and you do have that payment on a monthly basis. In the month of Ramadan, when you calculate your zakah, what is to be excluded from the virtual pool of money that you have, and what is to be included? How to determine the value of the assets that you have? You have a grocery store, you have like a car dealership business, right? How to determine the value of the assets that you have, and consequently how to pay zakah on them? Because if you do not know the value of what you have, how can you calculate your zakah accordingly? Agricultural products, whether it is agricultural products in general versus livestock, ovine versus bovine. Okay, zakah recipients, who are the 8 different categories that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala included in the Quran, in the very famous verse, ayat al-zakah, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها. Who are الفقراء, the needy? Who are المساكين? Okay, what does it mean العاملين عليها, the zakah workers? What does it mean في سبيل الله, for the cause of Allah? We need to know all these details and understand who is eligible to receive our zakah and who is ineligible, where we have to avoid and just give our zakah to somebody else. So if you have zakah recipients, then definitely we have non-zakah recipients. Some other technical rules here that we need to take into consideration. Restrictions in distributing zakatul mal. Do you have to cover the 8 different categories? Do you have to cover all individuals who fall under al-fuqara, the needy individuals? Okay, you have 75 needy individual within your local community. Do you have to cover all of them? Do you have to divide your money equally on 80 or 85 individuals, or it is your call to give your money to whomever you want? Some other rules regarding zakah essentials making your zakah payment valid, because zakah is a formal act of worship. Zakah is like salah, it's like the prayers that we do 5 times daily. It's a formal act of worship. So we have to go with the book, as they say. Certain rules for the validity of the zakah, we have to make sure that they are, met. Authority to accept zakah. Who is authorized within the Muslim community to collect zakatul mal and to distribute zakatul mal? Do I have the freedom of paying my zakah individually, or I have to give it to my masjid, or there are some other trustworthy Islamic organizations around, like Life for Relief, like Islamic Relief, like Zakat Foundation, like ICNA Relief, and all these different organizations? Do I have to give my zakat to them, or I can give my zakat to them? Of course, there is a big difference between the two answers. Stipulations for the zakat collector. If you want to get involved in collecting and paying zakatul mal on behalf, like, collecting it from the zakat payers and giving it to zakat recipients, what are the qualifications that you have to get involved? And the last point, I think, is transporting zakat. Do you have to go locally within your community? Can you send your money to like some poor individuals in Arizona and California if you live in Texas, or you have to, stick within the state that you live in? Can you send your money overseas if you have extended family members, if you have relatives, if you have some other, individuals overseas who are in desperate need for your zakah? Do you have the right to send them the money? Do you have to send them the money and just ignore the local projects that you have here? Who decides here? Is it your option? Is it your call? Or we do have some guidelines here? I would say those are briefly the sub-subjects that we will be covering, inshallah, in those 3, 4 maybe presentations. Moving on, we need to understand here, when it comes to substituting zakah by taxes, that you pay zakah to the IRS because you live in the US. As simple as that. You pay tax to the IRS because you live in the US. Whether you are like a Christian, a Jew, Muslim, atheist, Sikh, Hindu, okay, you do not believe in the existence of God. I mean, IRS does not care. Okay, you live in the US, whether you are American citizen or permanent resident or legal alien. Okay, as long as you live in this society, as long as you work legally, as long as you make money, then you have to pay tax to the government. As simple as that. Of course, we have like federal, like, tax to the pay to the federal government versus, tax to be paid to the state that you live in. If you have a state tax, like we live in Texas here, there is no state tax. I used to live in Louisiana a while ago. There was a state tax, so you have to abide with the law of the land and pay your tax accordingly. So you pay your tax because you live in this society, and you pay zakatul mal because you are a Muslim. You pay your zakatul mal because you are a Muslim. So zakat is a religious financial duty. Okay, is a religious financial duty, while the tax is a national, if you wish, okay, or citizenship related financial duty. There is no overlapping here. There is no connection between the two. So as you see here in the slide, zakah is a permanent and continuous pillar of Islam. Taxes are governmental obligation. Okay, and based on that, the tax that you pay to the government is not a substitute, is not an alternative of the zakah that you pay. Bear in mind that the recipients of zakah are divinely designated categories. They have been set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. Al-fuqara, al-masakin, the poor, the needy, al-amilina alayha, the zakah workers. Taxes are generally paid to enable functions of the state. Okay, in a very simple language, here in the US, we are zakah payers. I'm sorry, we are taxpayers, and we do actually receive totally or partially the money that we pay to the government. So the tax money that we pay, we benefit from it. When you have like for example, a financial aid, or you have a food stamp, okay, all the services that you enjoy, the 911 service, for example, actually it came from your tax money, right? And the streets and the parks and the other facilities and other utilities that you enjoy in this society are coming from the tax money that you pay. So technically speaking, you receive your money back. Okay, you receive your money back as a taxpayer. You pay money to the government, and you benefit from the money that you pay, okay, in a way or another. When it comes to zakat al-mal, in most cases, you cannot be a zakah payer and a zakah recipient at the same time. You cannot pay zakat to yourself. It has to be like one way. You are either a zakah payer if you have a surplus, okay, or you are a zakah recipient if you are a poor or needy individual, or in some cases you are like in between. You are neither. You're just neutral, right? You do not deserve to receive zakat because you are not that needy, and you are not that wealthy enough to pay zakat al-mal. So you are like in between. So recipients of zakat are divinely designated. Taxes are generally paid to enable functions of the state. Just for our information, let's make a very quick comparison between the nature of the tax money that we pay to the government, to the IRS, versus the zakah money that we pay. But just to make sure that we are on the same page, you have to pay zakat al-mal as a Muslim American, lives in this society, and you have to pay tax to the government, whether federal or state government, and there is no substitute or alternate here. Okay, it's not either or, it is both. You have to commit to both, and the fact that you pay a tax to the government is insufficient from paying zakat al-mal. You need to commit to paying zakat al-mal as well as paying tax to the government, both. Some differences here, just to see the whole, the overall picture, as you say. Zakah is paid on one's remaining wealth, not on the total income and holdings like taxes. That's a good point. When you file for your tax, you go with the total income that you have made. Nowadays we are in April 20 something, 21st, right? So we already passed the deadline for tax filing. But anyway, when you file for your tax, you file the total amount that you have made. Let's say that in 2019 you made $50,000. So you start your math, your calculation with the 50,000. Whenever you file for your tax, you have to report the $50,000 that you have made. Of course, there are some deductions based on the number of household, how many members, how many dependents, whether you have like a mortgage, whether you have insurance, whether you pay tuition fees for your kids. All these deductions are to be taken into consideration. But my point here is that you start your math with the total amount that you have made, 50,000, right? When it comes to zakat al-mal, as you see here, zakah is paid on one's remaining wealth. Okay, in our example here, if you made 2000 in 2019, $50,000, right? And you spent let's say 35,000 throughout the whole year long, and the remaining amount that you have in the month of Ramadan, the leftover, the saving, is 15,000. You start your math, you start your zakah calculation with the 15,000. So we do not care about how much you made in 2019. What we care about zakah calculation wise, what we care about is how much is remaining, how much is left over, okay, unspent, still have it in your possession, accessible, fully owned by you. That's from where you start paying zakah. So zakah is paid on one's remaining wealth, not on the total income and holdings like tax. This is a fundamental difference between tax calculation versus zakah calculation. Governments may waive unpaid taxes, but zakah cannot be waived no matter how far back it has accumulated. This is for fact that if you did not pay your zakah while you know that you're supposed to pay zakah, no one actually has the authority of excusing or waiving you from paying zakah. That's between you and your Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you have to make proper arrangement to backdate your zakah payment all the way to the day where you stopped paying zakat al-mal. When it comes to tax money, for some people, for some reason, the government actually might waive or excuse individuals from paying tax. It's not the case when it comes to zakat al-mal. Zakah ranges from 2.5% all the way up to 20% when it comes to treasury troves, and I will explain what does it mean. When we say in most categories you need to pay zakah based on 2.5%, it means in other words that zakah is not progressive. Okay, when it comes to tax calculation, we do have brackets here in the US. If you make from 0 to 10,000, then you are tax exempt. Okay, I mean, you don't have to worry about paying zakah. I'm just giving random numbers. And if you make from 10,000 all the way to 50,000, then you have to pay, let's say, only 5% from the total income, right? And if you make more than 50 all the way to 100, then it's going to jump to 7.5%. And if you make more than 100, it will jump to 20%. If you make more than half a million, it will jump to 35%, and on and on. So tax in this society here in the US is progressive, which means that the more money you make, the higher the percentage of your tax will be. When it comes to zakat al-mal, it's just fixed. It's not progressive. Whether you made in 2019, you made only 50,000 or you made $50 million, it does not make any difference whatsoever. It's still, since we are talking about cash money, it has to be 2.5% zakat rate. Now, who decides whether your zakah rate is 2.5 or 5% or 10 or 20%? It's not actually us, it is the shara, it is the legislation. We do have evidences either in the Quran or the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ showing clearly how much is the zakat rate on the treasury troves, on the agricultural products, on the livestock, on the cash money that we have, okay, on the commodities that you have in our stores if we have business, and on and on. So it's not by choice; it is actually by the book, by the evidences that we have in the Sunnah. Okay, mostly in the Sunnah, actually, there is nothing specific in the Quran when it comes to the zakah rate, like general hints here. وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ, and pay its due zakah in the day of cultivation, for example. But there is no clear mentioning in the Quran how much is the zakah rate on the agricultural products or the harvest that you have. Of course, no worthy return for paying zakah. As I said before, you are either a zakah payer or a zakah recipient. And in some cases, you are neutral in between. You do not pay zakah and you do not receive zakah. Okay. When it comes to tax, taxpayers receive direct or indirect services. Okay, all the services that we receive here in the U.S. Again, the parks and the streets and the public school system and the 911, like all these different services are coming from our tax money. But when it comes to zakah, it's one way. You either pay zakah to others, or if you are eligible, you receive zakah from others. But in most cases, you are not supposed to pay zakah and to receive your zakah back partially or totally, with some few exceptions here or there. I think this is a good point to stop by. It's now 7 o'clock in my side. Let me take some comments and questions if you have any, and then inshallah we'll continue. Next week. Comments, questions. Because I'm sharing my screen, by the way, I cannot see any questions here or comments yet. Okay. Do you want me to wait, Mimsy? Or just finish the session?
I think for now we'll just go ahead and we'll get to any questions maybe next week.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. Okay, brothers and sisters, I will see you inshallah next week, Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, like what we have done today. جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.